Okay, thank you. That leaves us off the hook. Come on. Bring the first 10%, a good part of your produce. Anybody in here have raised produce this year? That's just some of the ways people think. When it comes time to the offering, do you give an offering or do you give a tip? Some people, they use their offerings in church just like they tip waitresses and waiters at a restaurant. A long time ago, my brother Guy and I worked together. Every morning in Bradenton, Florida, right alongside the stadium where the Pittsburgh Pirates had their winter stadium and camp, there was a breakfast that you go to, a little restaurant called the Dugout. And it was set up in a way that the parking was right in front of the main entrance where you walked in. So I would pull in, and my brother would pull in right aside of me, or close to the same time. And the waitress, who waited on us every morning, she would have my food ready for me as we walked in and sat down. So finally, nothing from my brother Guy. Finally, one day, my brother Guy says, I don't understand this. Every time we pull up, and even sometimes I'm the first one in the door, and you'll have his food sitting, waiting for him, 2 eggs over, easy bacon, grits, and a biscuit. Sitting, waiting for him, and you have to ask, or I have to ask, you to wait on me. Well, she said, you get it according to how you tip.
There you go.
And he said, and Nancy worked waitress work sometime, and some others in there probably worked some waitress work. And he said, you get paid by the hour, don't you? And at that time, it was something ridiculously low, about like $1.40 or $1.50 an hour she got plus tips. And she said, I challenge you to live on my tips. Or my hourly, not my tip, but my hourly wages. How things have changed. I personally, and I'll brag on it, I personally have seen my brother Guy, just for a regular breakfast, lay $100 bill tipped down. And one time a gal chased us out of the restaurant and said, oh, you made a terrible mistake. I said, nothing. The Lord told me to give that to you. She started crying and said, you have no idea what this means. I'm raising my kids alone, and I didn't know how we were going to pay several bills this month. That was at the beginning of January. Towards the end of January, she had bills ready. So he went to not even putting the floor down on the counter to obeying what God wants. Excuse the cough drop. So the first question is, do you give an offering or do you give a tip when the plate comes around? Just a light tip. If you ever treasure the church, you can't hardly figure out how in the world people live on $10 a week. Because there's so many $1 bills. And then there's the old adage, well, it comes around, just tap the bottom of it to make noise. You'll make the people around you believe that you're putting money in it. Well, that won't work here. There's too many empty seats. And there's people waiting to have these seats, so you may want to begin moving towards the front so these people coming in late can grab a seat. I'm being a little facetious. Brother Richard read the 18th verse, the 16th chapter of Matthew. And Jesus said, I will build my church. Now, there would have been the big sign out front when you pulled up today, church for sale. New owners wanted a fly. But it's frozen fast to the ground back here, and you couldn't get it unfrozen. It didn't have a maul or something to beat it loose to get it out front. But there would have been a sign out front, church for sale. And so why would you do something like that? Well, do something like that to wake people up. Wake people up. Who owns the church? Who owns the church? Jesus said, plainly he said, I will build my church. It's right there in verse 18. I will build my church. He doesn't say you Baptists build the church, you Episcopalians build the church, you evangelical free build the church, you Hemonites, stalactites, and cost a penny and all that. He didn't say that. He said, on you, Peter, I will build my church. On this stone, I will build my church. Do you have enough stones for him to build a church on you? Do we have enough stones? What is the problem? What is the problem? There's apparently something going on that I'm missing. So, we might as well put the church up for sale. You can look on the wall back there on the board and the landing coming in. This last month's financial report. And see, I got $3,400 and some dollars income and $3,100 and some dollars going out. And one of that was, and some people say, well, where'd all our money go? Well, it's $500, and how much was $500 and something for insurance? $595. $595. That's $600. And just things like that, it takes it. And so, just like the waitress in many restaurants, they have trouble living on the tips that people give them. That's why so many have charged, oh, there's probably a good idea. We could charge a gratuity to come to church. I like that. Years ago, Nancy had a friend, and she lived right off of Mount Rose Avenue, and the church that she attended would send notes out that you owe this for offering, and this is what you've missed. And I preached in a church in Galveston, Texas one time. That was very interesting. I was the only white face there. So I preached in that church, and before we started to preach, they lifted the offering. And then they took a bulletin such as this, and inside the bulletin was, it read like this: Ed Lentz, $8. John Keener, $2. Sally May, $1. They marked down everything that you gave last week, and they had it in the bulletin that following Sunday. And I wasn't believing what I saw. I couldn't believe that. And I said to the preacher, in fact, the associate pastor there, I had the awesome honor and pleasure of leading him to the Lord when we were doing some work in Bradenton, Sarasota, Florida area. And he said, well, brother, he said, we don't do that. We don't get anything. Okay. That church is no longer there today. A couple years ago, a typhoon or hurricane come through, and part of Galveston, Texas was just completely flattened. You may have seen that in the news about a year or so ago, maybe 2 years. It's gone. Everything's gone. But the thing was, just imagine, Miss Carol, if you come to church next Sunday morning and be in the inside of the bulletin what you donated. Now we move to the next question. This is a test question. If everybody who's in the church was like you, first of all, in service, what kind of church would it be? In serving the Lord. If everybody in the church was like you, to their offerings, tithes and offerings, what kind of church would it be? If everybody's like me, be driving Fords, you'd have Remington rifles. Come on, work with me. You'd have a Ford tractor sitting out under the tree. It don't work. And that's why Dennis has those red ones. They work. He keeps them in, well, some of them. How many you have? 7, 8? 7 or 8? Just imagine, Richard, if you were like Dennis Lynch, you'd have 7 tractors sitting in there where you live. They probably wouldn't put up with that, would they? These are just examples. You stole them. I know where John and Deb live, and I guarantee you there's no room for 7 tractors there. Well, you might be able to get 3 or 4 in that backyard, right? Yeah, you can just kind of stack them in there like a farm show. Supposing, now some people, and this means no disrespect, but some people, they'll miss at least a Sunday or 2 in a month. If everybody was like you, then some Sundays there'd be no church. There'd be nobody to speak to. Work with me, gang. Come on. Ask yourself the question. Christ loved the church so much that He gave Himself. For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whomsoever... I thought that whomsoever dresses like they just got off a wagon train and paint their bumpers black. See, too many churches down through the years, we act like, if we're not careful, we act like we own the church, and if you don't like what we're doing, we're going to sell it. Think about it. Jesus said, I will build my church. With a capital M. I will build my church. But how many times does the board come off with, they own it? This is our church. My sound booth, man, don't touch. Can't touch this. That's my booth. That's my pew. Well, if you have a problem with a seat in here, you're in serious trouble. You're either blind or just don't care. Well, there's plenty of seats, plenty of place to sit. But yet we basically sit at the same seat every Sunday. And even Wednesday night. Come on, work with me. But who owns the church? Some congregations, large congregations, Assemblies of God, some of them, they own the church property. They own the building. Some others, the church property is owned by a family. Family controls most of the tithes and offerings that come in, so they feel as though they own it. That's my seat. Well, last year I gave $500, and that's my seat. So I have the right to sit in the same place. Jesus can't build a church on that. God can't, and God can do anything and all things, but He can't build a church on a person that thinks just because they give $500 that He can build His church on that. He can build His church on 5 cents. He can build His church on a promise if you keep the promise. But you got to keep the promise. You have your cell phone? David, let me borrow your cell phone for a second, please. I promise I'm not going to look at your stuff. This is pretty much the norm these days. Hey, you! What? Watch out, you're about ready to be a kid. I learned last night that our one granddaughter was taking her sister, and they were headed to the Baltimore airport to pick up her daddy. And the one was driving was doing 7, I'm going to tell you which one's driving, one was doing 70 miles an hour and texting. And that's how many people, I don't know, gazillion people. Randy, when you drive, how many people do you see? 9
out of 10.
9 out of 10 texting while they're driving. I've seen them with a newspaper laid on the steering wheel. Driving. Now they say don't drive and text. Well, okay, I agree with that. Let's say keep your... There was an old song years ago. Keep your mind on the drive and keep your hands on the wheel. Keep your snoopy eyes on the road ahead. We're having fun sitting in the back seat, kissing and hugging with red. Not me, it wasn't. Would have been her. But anyhow, keep your mind on the drive. Well, then these brilliant people from Detroit and Japan and other places where they make cars, they put a TV screen in on the TV and on the dash. Wait a minute, they don't want you to drive and text, but to put a screen on the dash. How stupid is that? Had a wonderful party last night. Had a lot of people at the house. When it come down to just a few, guess what? 4 out of 6 of the few were doing? Sitting at the table. I talked to Mason's teacher this week. To be honestly fair, they popped some photos of when our kids were little and we were a little younger. They popped some photos. And they were catching the responses. But I talked to Mason's teacher, and Mason's teacher said they have some children in their class, in 3rd grade. We had some kids that were sitting there Thanksgiving. I promise I didn't check on your girlfriends. She says they have students that are sitting there doing this. They're looking at the wall with their fingers, and they're moving. They play so much, and I'm just as guilty as anybody else. Mason, he'd probably die if he took away his Xbox. Who owns the church and what are we going to build it on? Are we going to build it on iPads? Are we going to build it on what have you? What are we going to do? I got a note here. He wants us at Christ Chapel this new year. He wants us to become a dedicated church. Dedicated to what? Dedicated. Now we don't have a whole lot, and we don't have a lot of folks. But what we do have are, for the most part, faithful. What do you want to be here today? We're faithful. It bothers me, as senior pastor, bishop, whatever, that we have so many empty seats. That bothers me. Even towards late, if we'd had a dinner, we still have empty seats in our dining area. Now, I guarantee it's not the most beautiful dining area. We got genuine concrete floors. Our churches in Kenya, most all of them have dirt floors. Well, it is dirt. It's not soil, is it, Dennis? It's dirt. It's dirt. But even when we're having free meals, people haven't been showing up. So what is it? Work with me. Tell me what it is.
I think it's our hearts.
Your heart? Okay. Dedication is our heart towards God. What kind of church would it be like if every member was like me? Just ask yourself a question, what kind of church would it be like if every member was like me? Are you getting a good picture in your mind? You got a good picture of what it'd be like if everybody was like Richard and had white ties? You got a good picture? There have been churches down through the years that try to make everybody look like, walk like, talk like, spell alike, and wear the same clothing. Women looked like they stepped off a wagon train, and all the men had the colors turned up. Didn't have a lapel like this. Had to look like, walk like, talk like, and smell like. Well, one thing about it, most of them didn't smell it. They couldn't smell it past the test, on the test. There's some of them just don't do it. And some smell like garlic. Some smell like liquor. There's people who drink every morning before they go to church. Well, I don't know. There's a whole lot of difference between them and me. I take a handful of meds. I was thinking this week when I tallied up, Nancy picked up my meds at the pharmacy. Bear in mind, we're thinking about if everybody else in church is like me, not me, but you're supposed to be thinking that if everybody else in church is like you. Okay? I tallied up the meds that you picked up for me Friday. It was $986.84 for my medication that she picked up. I feel the same way, if anybody asks me. So if everybody's like me, we probably wouldn't have what we have here now. Maybe. Well, thank God we have insurance. Laid out $81 just for me, $81 and some odd cents, which is fantastic. Fantastic. So we get back to, maybe that's the reason why so many people, when the offering plate comes around, they tip. Instead of giving an offering, you give a tip for Richard and Randy. Here's your tip, guys. You don't have to live on the rest of the week. That won't even fill up Randy and Lee's trucks that they drive. What it takes to fill up a diesel one time. Your big truck. $700 every time you pull up with a pump. You say, well, Pastor, times are hard. We've been unemployed. We've had this happen. We've had that happen. Richard, he's losing his teeth one by one. And it's just so many things are changing. That's true. One thing that does not change, and that change is we don't own the church. The physical, in this case, not even the physical, we here do not own the church. God owns the church. Christ Chapel here owns the church. Christ Chapel is the body of believers, but we don't own the property. The Larkins don't own the property. Most people you hear them talk to you and talk about it, they talk about the Larkins church. Well, that only is referring to the fact that I'm the pastor. Doesn't refer to that I own the property. Right before we bought this place in 2007, they were entertaining, in fact they have it in here, antique dealer wanted to turn this property into an antique dealership. They thought it would be wonderful to the aesthetics of it on the outside and the inside be an antique dealer, an antique shop. Right now in Helm, I think Deb Keener told me one time she either lived there or near there. There's a big, beautiful brick church with big columns and absolutely gorgeous stained glass windows. It was cut up into three apartments. There's 3 meters hanging out on the post of the church's 3 apartments. Why did that happen? In there too far from where General Rich lived in King Street, they are still dickering over what they're going to do with that huge church. It's about a half block from where they used to live. About 2 blocks from where you live now. Right? Absolutely gorgeous. But the church went up for sale. The physical church went up for sale. And you know what? Whether you believe this or not, there are church members walking around today with a sign on their forehead, "I'm for sale." "I'm for sale for the highest bidder." You say, "No, how's that possible?" Okay, let me walk through this thing. This is, we used to say, how's that about the church?
Here's the church. There's the steeple. Open the door. See all the people.
Ho, 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 ho! Did you ever do that, Tyler? You ever taught that before? Well, we're really old, aren't we? We were ancient. All right. So the church, as you see the structure, it is just a building. We preached under trees in Kenya. We had church. And the only thing there was a tarp to try and shade us from the sun, and it had so many holes in it, so it looked like somebody shot with a shotgun. If you stayed there long enough, you'd come out with a tan like a leopard. You'd have dark spots and all over you, and just spots with the sunshine through. We have had church in some very peculiar places. So then, the building, first thing you do when you look at this, you say, "Yeah, you're right, that's the church. That'd be the church." That's a structure. It's the people. So you're the church. All right, now let's step back just a little bit. Then if I'm the people, we the people are the church. That's true. How many of you believe that the people are the church? Okay? All right. Let's go up here. Let's look at this thing for a little bit. We are the church. David King, you are church. Bless you. You know, I was watching for you to do that, and you did it. Bless you, son. You're mature, aren't you? Believe it or not, Chris Keener's a church. John Keener's a church. Hope's a church. Tyler's a church. Connie's a church. We're all the church. But too many times the church is acting like we're for sale. Somebody want to explain that to me? We'll compromise things. So that's put yourself on the market. I'll compromise. I'll go along with it, but I preached a message one time. Preached a message on but, and not your but. But what you say? Yes, Sam. Whatever comes down the line, we're there. Party's on. Whatever somebody offers, we're on. We're ready to go. You bring something that makes me feel good and do good, whether it's weed, alcohol, or a smorgasbord, as long as it makes me feel good, I'm going to do it. So many times, we the people, in order to form a perfect union, what does that start out? You got to perfect dress. We the people, in order to form, we the people here at Christ Chapel, in order to form a more perfect church, we got to quit hanging our shingle out for sale. We got to quit hanging our shingle out for sale. We got to let people know, I don't do that. I'm not for sale. Well, this makes you feel really good now, man. You just got a little bit of this, it's going to make you feel good. Look at the ads on television. Look at the ads in the newspaper. As we mentioned a couple of weeks ago, what are they trying to sell? Little Quinlan, he'll be 3 February 25th. He said Nancy a couple of weeks ago, and Victoria's Secret advertisement was on television. He said, I'm all there naked. They believe that you ladies are for sale. And that if you see that, now they don't put it on there for me to buy. Right, John? So they got those things on there for you ladies so you'll cram yourself into that stuff and look sexy. I'm ready to go. Will you trade what you have for something to make you feel good? That's what so many of the church members are doing. I'm not pointing at anybody here. I'm just saying the church is always looking for something that makes them feel better. And now remember, I'm talking about the people in the church, the body, looking for something to make them feel good. I tell you, it'd be so nice if I could come here and get out and walk in on a macadam drive. That would be so nice. Well, then you be the one who thinks that is, and you be the one to call in King and say, you're not going to have money for food this month because we're using that money we send every month to King that we've committed. We're going to use that to put in the driveway. Who wants to make a phone call? Come on, work with me, church. Are we for sale or not? Are we for sale? Another thing I have down here. If church was just like you, would we need services on Wednesday night? Wednesday night, I'll tell you what, something's pitiful, absolutely pathetic. And that is, the children that live at our house, including Elizabeth, we got to get a babysitter for them for Wednesday night to come to church. Because we don't have anybody to take care of them. We don't have anybody to teach them. If the church was just like you, would we have church every other Sunday? If the church was like you, there'd be no prayer. Or very little prayer. Good God, good meat, let's eat. Hail Mary, full of grace, Jews are now in second place. Whatever kind of prayer you come up with, or supposable prayer. We're studying for the ministry. We're told that a preacher has to be ready for 3 things at a moment's given notice: pray, preach, and die. If the preacher's not ready to preach at a moment's given notice, and is not ready to pray at a moment's given notice, it's like, John knocked me on my feet this morning. Well, not really. But John said to me, Pastor, open prayer. I wasn't expecting that. I'm not bragging. I'm just telling you facts. I wasn't expecting that. Because he usually does. I've been to the hills of Judea, been to the hills outside of Bethlehem, been in the hills of Jordan. I've seen thousands and thousands of sheep. And I've seen hundreds of shepherds. Now I saw a lot of sheep with little lambs following after. That's the cutest little thing. Lambs following after the mamas in a herd. But I never saw one shepherd with little sheppies following him. I never looked out there and I saw a shepherd who's got little sheppies around him. Shepherds don't have sheep. Sheep have sheep. So, if everybody was like you, who haven't invited anybody, or if you do invite anybody, say, well, they probably won't come anyhow. But I invited them, they probably won't come anyhow. Just keep after it. Just keep after it. Don't be rude, don't be crude, don't be obnoxious. It's my church. This is my church. This is your church. Say it with me. This is my church. This is your church. It's your church. It doesn't belong to the government yet. Excuse me, I had to say that. Another thing I tell you, don't get bronchitis. It lasts for a long time. If the church was like you, would there be Bibles in the pews every week? Some of you got it slick and you just leave your Bibles here and then you don't have to worry about that. There's something about seeing people enter the church on a Sunday morning carrying a Bible. That's a witness. That is a witness. You imagine a state cop stopping you and he doesn't have his pistol? And I have pistols, tasers, nightsticks, radios, and and well, we help, you know. Oh, and they have Teflon vests. They got all kinds of things. Well, we got people coming into church naked. And somebody's saying, well, I hate to see that. Coming in naked. Coming in not prepared. So, if everybody was like you, and you are a person who does not prepare for church with prayer in the morning, sit down, have a bowl of Wheaties, I haven't seen that in television for a long time. Wheaties is the breakfast of champions. Did they do it that? I don't shop, but no, Wheaties are breakfast of champions. They just show some of the weirdest looking cartoon characters with that food. Man, it might look like a Purvis and there's a couple other things that they have, a really weird looking thing. And our kids like the kitty. You know what the kitty is? Tony the Tiger. Tony the Tiger. They like the kitty. When you come to church, are you prepared? Are you prepared to receive? If I say, okay, Dennis, get the checkbook out. After church, we're all going into apostles. Church picking up the tab. Nah. We only get one plate if we go there. Let's go into, what's that place out West Market Street? Let's go. Okay, church is taking everybody today to Old Country Buffet. And I'll tell you what, see the guys up there, I got room on britches. I'm up in the room there. Back to the table and picking this stuff and coming back carrying this stuff and the place scattered up to the back. And he got it, there's some of that stuff he didn't want, so you just put that aside, and then the girl comes and picks up that dirty plate, and then you go back to the table again, come back, and you got another big plate. You want to get all of your money you can get. Three, 4 times more than what you need in a whole week. And then when you get to the dessert table, oh my. So many decisions. Hey, you're for sale. You're for sale. We are for sale. How many times is the church for sale for gluttony? We'll fill it up, we'll fill it up, and we'll fill it up, and we'll fill it up, and we'll overeat, get miserable. You just sold yourself out. And I know this is a little different than what you've been used to hearing down through the years. And probably way different than some other people would think it's going to hear in church. But everybody would make sure that you have enough room because the church is taking you into the country club and you get all you want. So you'll make yourself ready to get prepared so you can get plenty. Right? But yet when it's time to come to church, you just barely get out the door to get here in time. 10:30. Just barely get here in time. So, the church, if everybody in the church was like you, would there be the church on time? The one country song used to be, get me to the church on time. Get me to the church on time. I don't know what to say about that. I was just sharing with somebody last night. In fact, Missy Northrup outfit, now Abel, Missy Abel, Everett's daughter, they were at the house last night. And I was sharing with her husband, when we had their wedding right here, a little over a year ago. I was sharing with him about when we set up this, especially this last time, remember Nancy? We set up for Thursday morning to start the leadership sessions. Leadership seminars, we set up time to start 10 a.m. Thursday morning. Then we break for lunch, and then we had a PM session 4 days in a row. Well, we got there. In fact, we were late. They had to come fix us. But we were late. We got there about right at 10. There's nobody there. 10:30, nobody there. 11:30, nobody there. When we broke out the food, some showed up. Well, then by noon session, we had a lot of people. And they explained to me, as they've had many times, that Americans have watching, Kenyans have the time. They weren't prepared to come and be there. Now, that is the norm in Kenya. But in York County and Lancaster County, Pennsylvania Dutch, basically, that is not the norm. The norm is time to start. Be on time. Somebody saying, well, so it's almost 12 o'clock, it's time to quit. Ask yourself a question. Just to make sure if you're serious. Repeat after me. If everybody in the church was like me, what would the church be like? I want you to take that home with you. Jesus said, upon this rock I will build my church. I want to know today, are you rocky enough for him to build a church on? Or are you on again, off again? Or are you a person who is looking for what the church will give you? UFOs. Unidentified. Or are you a person that you can identify, that people can identify you as a believer? F, are you freeloaders of the church? Whatever the church has, you'll take it. And the last one. You're an onlooker. Come in, sit down, and then leave. clock's at the back of the church. You just imagine if the clock is up here. You'd be noticing the hands on the clock instead of my hands. A long time ago, I learned in business, selling insurance. When you're sitting down with a group, a family, at a table, you always try to get them, when you're selling insurance, try to get them to the table. Get a husband and wife to the table. And you start analyzing as soon as you enter the house, does the husband make the decisions or does the wife make the decisions? And then if you figure out, well, the wife makes a decision, you place yourself when you sit down at the table, where you can look directly at the wife. Or if the husband is the one seat, when he makes the decision, you look directly at him. And you never settle in a place where they have to look back and forth. Well, what do you think, Phil? Oh, I don't know, Margaret. What do you think? And so, one of the other things in seminar teaching us about selling life insurance, you never set a husband and wife team in a place where they're having to turn their head and look at each other like that because they're practicing their head to say no. You notice people that especially these telemarketers, they call them television, and they rattle and say, is that okay? Is that okay? No, that's not okay. Is that okay? Do you like that? No, I don't like that. But that's what they're practiced to do. When you sit down into insurance, the first thing we wanted to get you to do is get in your head to say yes. Learn to know your people. Learn to know the people who are around you. Are they believers or not? Can you recognize a believer or the people that you're dealing with in a week's time unidentified? Your church members, the people that you're in church with, you can't identify whether or not they're believers when they're out on the street. You meet them at the York Fair or at the Farm Show building or any place with a group of people gather. You pick out the believers. Nancy and I were at Dutch Chapel Theater last week. Can you pick out the believers? I don't know. Dennis and Bev Lentz were there last night. Could you pick out the believers? Dennis and Bev? Could you pick them out? Oh, there was a couple you probably felt pretty comfortable with, but pick them out. Can you be identified as a believer? Can you be identified as a church? And we don't have to put this for sale sign on it. Hallelujah. Today as Christ Chapel, we are on the ground level. Even though we bought this place in 2007, we are in ground level. We are still working on a building for my Lord. We're working on it. At one time, my brothers and my dad and I, we had 30-some people working for us. They weren't the builders. They were carpenters, laborers, masons, electricians, high-lift operators. They weren't the builders. We were the builders. We were doing the building. And Jesus said, I build my church. I will build my church. Would you please stand?